Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new movie review, and this time we are talking about the new DC film by the name of The Suicide Squad, brought to us by the one, the only James Gunn. Got a chance to check it out in theaters the other day, and I'm really excited to share my thoughts with you all and let you know if I think it's worth checking out in the spoiler-free review. Before we break it all down, do me a favor and check me out on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler-free review of The Suicide Squad, well, make sure to like the video and share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support. And in those comments, let's discuss The Suicide Squad. Let me know if you were excited for this film. Was it one of your most anticipated movies this year? And once you got an opportunity to see it in theaters or on HBO Max, let me know which way you saw it for the first time. What did you think about the film? Let's talk your pros, your cons. Who were your favorite characters, your least favorite characters? Did you have a good time? Do you want to see a continuation of these characters, whether it be spin-offs like we know with Peacemaker or a sequel to this film? And let me know if you were maybe disappointed by this film. And since we're talking DC, and particularly DCEU, what is your favorite film in the DCEU universe? Give me your top 3, and let's have a discussion about it in the comments below. So listen, man, The Suicide Squad has been a film with a lot of hype, a lot of buzz in the last few years, but in particularly in the last week or so, people got the opportunity to see it a week or two in advance, and word around town is it's the best comic book movie of all time. It's easily the best DCEU film in the current roster, and listen, I'm here to talk about it and give you all my thoughts on all that stuff. Starting off with my positives, I got to start with growing up in loving film for all my life, but in particularly studying film with high school courses, going to college for film and video. It's always been said that Warner Brothers is the studio that gives directors their vision, that lets them be creative. And we know that's the case for most of the time, but it seems like in the last maybe decade or so, or maybe in particular the last 8 years, once the Zack Snyder Man of Steel universe and the Snyderverse came to be, that narrative has kind of switched, right? Whether it be BVS, whether it be Suicide Squad 2016, whether it be muffling with Patty Jenkins and the first Wonder Woman in the third act, and so on and so forth. And it seems like that narrative has definitely changed. And I'm so happy to say that I feel like Warner Brothers definitely let James Gunn let his vision out in the most glorious, most gory, most funny, most disturbing way possible. And I'm glad to see this. And I hope this is what we can expect with a Matt Reeves, the Batman, with a David F. Sandberg coming back for Shazam 2, with a Black Adam, and so on and so forth, that they're going to let these creative, talented individuals tell their stories. And one thing that is very unique about what James Gunn's able to do is very similar to a Todd Phillips doing the Joker, what we're going to get with Matt Reeves. This is a singular kind of enclosed story that doesn't really necessarily tie into the DCEU. And I'll just say this when it comes to Elliot, is this connected to the 2016 David Ayers version? I'll just say this without diving into spoilers. I don't think you've had to seen that film to appreciate these characters and understand their narrative here. I would say to me this is what they refer to as a standalone sequel, meaning that there may be one or two lines that references that 2016 version, but very similar to Jumanji and the Jumanji sequel, where it pays homage and it pays somewhat attention to that narrative, as well as like a Mad Max Fury Road. So it's kind of in that lane where you don't have to have seen those films to appreciate this film, which is, something I think is really unique. But going back to the man behind the camera, James Gunn's vision, his sensibilities, his imprint is all throughout this film. This felt like a graphic novel. This felt like I was watching a comic book truly come to life, whether it be the title cards, whether it be the pacing, whether it be the standalone moments with the quieter moments with our characters, with whether it be the blood, the gut, the action. All that stuff is really highlighted through James Gunn's sensibilities, and he really was let loose in this film. And it makes me excited to see if he does come back to do a DC Universe film, which I think he said that he wants to either do a sequel to this or maybe tackle another DC property. I am all for it. I'm a big fan of James Gunn, and I'll just say this, wrapping up the James Gunn section of this review, I have to say, man, I think he has to be, in this world that we live in cancellation, he has to have one of the best comebacks as far as like him being canceled with all the stuff that went down many, many years ago on Twitter and losing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 at that time. But then obviously working it out with DC, coming back to do Guardians 3, it really worked out for him. And I'm not glad that that kind of happened, but in a way I am, because we would have never gotten this film. But James Gunn directed the hell out of this film. But I got to talk about these characters. And I have to talk about, because there's so many characters, I'm going to talk about my top 5 characters. And I'm going to start with Harley Quinn, which I think Margot Robbie does her best performance of Harley Quinn so far, and hopefully we get more of Harley Quinn in the future. But just seeing her, this is her 3rd time playing the character, 3 different directors, 3 interpretations, but I think this is an amalgamation of what a David Ayer brought to the table, what a Kathy Yen brought to the table, and now James Gunn kind of plays in his universe. I really enjoyed her narrative in the story, and we get the wild chaoticness that we get from David Ayer's version. We get the lessons learned, the life lessons, her knowing that she doesn't need the Joker, doesn't need a man to kind of control her life, and then bringing that into this film. You see all that within this character, and I had so much fun with Harley Quinn. There's a particular sequence in the film that I think is one of the best action sequences that we've seen from Harley Quinn, kind of akin to what we got in Birds of Prey, the prison moment, but this is just that times 10. So I really had a good time with her. I really had some good laughs and really enjoyed Margot Robbie's performance in there. So that's definitely my number 1 character from this film. Number 2, man, is my man Idris Elba, aka Black Superman, but aka Bloodsport. He is, I will say, he's very similar to Deadshot. I'm not gonna lie, very similar plot and storyline, all that stuff, but nonetheless separated him from the great actor as Will Smith is, and he's his own great actor in his own right. Idris Elba as Bloodshot was fantastic, man. I really was rooting for the character. I really want to know more about how he put Mr. Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet, but that's a story for another day. Hopefully we'll see that. But nonetheless, I thought that he was, I truly think he's the lead of this film. It's an ensemble cast, but I think that his narrative, he got the most meat as far as motivations, character arc, and where you see him at the end of the film. I think that he was definitely the most fleshed out character, and he delivered on every front. So I really appreciate that character and hope that we maybe get to see either prequels, sequels, follow-ups for that character, because I was really intrigued and really fascinated by that character, Bloodsport. I thought he was fantastic. So that's my number 2. Number 3 is very surprising because I am not recently, I wasn't a fan of this actor in a Fast and Furious 9 film, and that is John Cena. But I am convinced that James Gunn is the wrestler turned actor, man to get the job done and pull out the great performance out of, whether it be what we got with Dave Bautista as Drax, and now you can say that about John Cena as Peacemaker, because he was such an asshole in this film in the best way possible. I wasn't necessarily excited for his character. I wasn't necessarily excited about the announcement of him having his own TV show. But after watching this film, and I won't say how his show is going to play into, is it a prequel, is it a sequel? I won't get into all that stuff, but I'll just say this. I'm excited to see what they do with Peacemaker, because Peacemaker in this film was, like I said, he was an asshole, but he was also funny. He was also very menacing. He was also very, very violent in the way that he handled his business, whether it is killing kids, women, men, children, you name it. This man wants peace at any cost necessary, and his whole back and forth between him and Bloodsport was fantastic. And again, John Cena, after F9, who I thought he was the worst character-wise, acting-wise, I was just like, John Cena, wow, you were terrible in that film. But it just goes to show you, and this is no disrespect to Justin Lin, the director of that film, but it just goes to show you, when you have the right director that can pull out the right role, pull out the right sensibilities from an actor, you get their, one of their better performances. And I thought John Cena was fantastic. That's my number 3 favorite character. Number 4 comes down to Ratcatcher number 2. That young lady, who this is my first time being exposed to her, I thought that she was the heart and the soul of the team in regards to the humanity. I really don't even think she was necessarily a villain per se, as we know that Task Force X is assembled by villains, but I really enjoyed her narrative. I enjoyed her, again, her humanity, her more emotional moments, her more vulnerable moments, her more human moments, and really kind of brought that to the forefront. And also her very weird power set that she can control rats. And there's a particular character in this film that isn't a fan of rats, but I really enjoyed Rat Catcher 2, and I thought that the actress did a fantastic job in the film. And then number 5, Viola Davis as Amanda Waller was so good in this film. Man, she is, talk about assholes. Oh my goodness, Amanda Waller might be more of a villain than the Suicide Squad Task Force X herself. She was great in this film. I really want more Viola Davis in the DC universe. I want more of her making these missions, calling these missions, making these decisions that make her own team question her as a human. She was just great. I don't want to get too much to Amanda Waller and her presence in this film, but let's just say Viola Davis was fantastic. So those are my top 5 characters. There are so many other characters that were great in their roles that I really appreciated, that may or may not have been in the film as much as I was expecting them to be. But, you know, a Rick Flag, he did a good job. Boomerang, you know, all those different characters, Michael Rooker's character, they all did good in their roles. But those were my top 5 characters. Transition to some other things that I enjoyed about the film. I mentioned James Gunn's sensibilities, but the action, the gore, the blood, the laughs, the narrative that was kind of told within the story as this kind of, you know, forgotten about people in their world. Polka Dot Man is someone that comes to mind in regards to learning more about it. Batman, by the way, has some of the best rogues gallery, but also some of the most weirdest villains. Polka Dot Man, Kite Man, Condiment King, and this is one of them. Polka Dot Man is someone that comes to mind in regards to learning about what makes these characters, what got them to where they are in regards to being part of this group and being part of the Suicide Squad and just learning more about them. I found that to be fascinating. Just a narrative of coming together, dysfunctional family, and all that stuff that you would expect from a James Gunn film really kind of hits home. So those are really the standout things for me. Jumping into some of my criticisms, as far as, you know, I gave you my top 5 characters, but some of the characters didn't really resonate with me. I know this might be blasphemy, but I wasn't a fan of King Shark. I thought that the visuals were cool. There were some funny moments, him splitting people, eating people, num, all that stuff was fun. But I just personally, I am like kind of hit or miss when it comes to like straight up dumb characters. Like this is obviously the Drax of the group, right? He tells the jokes. He really doesn't have much to offer in regards to intelligence. So I'm kind of, you really got to sell me on the comedy to really like appreciate a very dumb, very like childlike type of sensibilities, where again, I just wasn't as entertained by King Shark as I know a lot of you all will be. So that was one character that I didn't really resonate with. Another character that comes to mind is particularly the quote-unquote villains of the story, who were the president and a general. Those characters to me were very one-note, very one-dimensional, very kind of generic type of characters that I really didn't care for. And then in regards to other things that really didn't sit well with me in the film, and not necessarily sit well, but this is something that I was hoping would be a little bit more entertaining or a little bit more compelling, was the actual story. This might be something you all disagree with me with, but this film is very similar to the 2016 version of Suicide Squad in regards to the narrative. Now, Task Force X, I'm not the biggest Suicide Squad comic book fan just because I feel like their narratives are pretty repetitive. And this is pretty repetitive in regards to, you look at the narrative, you get the group, you meet who they are, they have to take out this intergalactic supernatural type of entity. Well, not supernatural in the sense of what we get in the first Suicide Squad in 2016, but you have this intergalactic Star Road character. They got to take him out, they got to bond together. It's very repetitive in the sense of same thing, same narrative, and, you know, kind of the same result of how things end up. So I will say the story wasn't all that as innovative as the visuals, as the characters. The story was just very bland, very generic, very repetitive to the 2016 version, and also very repetitive to a lot of the Suicide Squad stories. And that's why I'm not like the biggest Suicide Squad fan, because a lot of their stories are like the same thing that they're doing over and over and over again. But like I said, I just felt that the story was just very kind of generic and very basic in the sense of that. But outside of that, guys, before I give you my overall thoughts and give you my score, give you maybe my rankings, and let you know if I think this is the best comic book movie of all time, if you haven't already, make sure to like, share, comment, leave your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the film, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Overall, the Suicide Squad to me isn't the greatest comic book movie of all time. I don't even think it's the best DCEU film of all time, but I cannot ignore the sensibilities of James Gunn being able to direct the film that he wanted to tell, being able to write the characters that he wanted to illustrate on the screen, being able to play in the sandbox. He did a fantastic job. Again, I mentioned my favorite characters. They were great. The action's there. The jokes, for the most part, land. The gore is there. The building this family, building a squad is all entertaining and fun. There were some characters I didn't really necessarily care for. I mentioned how I thought the story was very generic and very basic, but at the end of the day, I was hella entertained. I can't wait to see more of Peacemaker. I can't wait to see potentially more of these characters. I can't wait to see what James Gunn does next in the DC universe. With all that being said, I'm going to give the Suicide Squad a solid 4 out of 5, and I cannot recommend it enough if you all are able to go see it in theaters with a group of people that love DC films. See it on the biggest screen that you have in your area, and I hope you all have a good time, because I certainly did. It wasn't the best comic book movie all the time, but it was definitely a fun one. And as far as rankings, I would say this is probably my third favorite DCEU film, behind, A Man of Steel and behind something like Wonder Woman, 2017 Wonder Woman. I still think those films, just as a film, definitely kind of played more into my sensibilities as those characters, and also just kind of plays more to a more complex narrative than what we got in this film. But still, top 3. And I'm going to revisit it. I'm going to watch it again and see if I maybe like more of the story and maybe like more of the characters I didn't like first time seeing it. So that's my thoughts on the Suicide Squad. 4 out of 5. Recommend you all check it out. And when you do, let me know your pros, your cons, your favorite character, least favorite character, your rankings, and if you think this is the best comic book movie of the year or of all time. Let's discuss it all in the comments. If you stuck around to the end of this video, I appreciate every single one of you all. Again, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell, that way you don't miss any more other content. Hope you all enjoyed this spoiler-free review of the Suicide Squad. Keep an eye out for a spoiler discussion, maybe coming in a few days, but I hope you all are staying safe. I hope you all are doing well, and we'll see you on the next video.